Prynawn da, good afternoon. I'm Elbert Roberts. I've worked with Pobl for 15 years, but for the last 18 months I've had the role of Head of Sustainability and Innovation. And essentially that means that I'm involved in our massive effort to decarbonise our new build homes, but obviously sharing that experience with all the efforts that's going into retrofitting our existing homes so that they will also become low carbon in the future. Just a word about Pobl. We, like Coastal Housing Association, we cover the whole of South Wales. I think we've currently got about 18,000 existing homes all the way from Monmouthshire to Pembrokeshire, as far north as Powys. We employ, I think, 2,500 people, so we have a diverse range of employees. We work a lot in the community, so essentially the vast amount of our people are involved working in care facilities, supported accommodation, landscaping and so on and so forth. But the slide in front of you just really emphasises, we really had a soul searching about 2 years ago, and we arrived at 5 major sort of ambitions that we want to have and drive forward over the next decade. I'm particularly involved with the idea of placemaking. Placemaking is a word that seems a lot these days, but essentially it's about creating homes and communities where people actually want to live, designed around people, not designed about the car, but designed around really creating a really great place to live in terms of well-being, social cohesion, and having mixed and sustainable communities. But our ambition really is over the next decade to build 10,000 new homes, which is an enormous challenge that we're having to meet. But the second point is that over the next 10 years, we really want to develop our role as carbon cutters, not only on the way that we run our business in terms of travelling, energy used in our offices and so on, but also in addressing the 18,000 homes that we've got, but also in establishing a new standard for all of the new homes that we're going to build, so that they genuinely become a zero carbon company in the future. I'm here to talk about driving that decarbonisation agenda and energy efficiency through using a local supply chain. But I want to do that primarily through talking about a project that we're actually building now in Swansea called Gwynfaen. And when I mentioned the local supply chain, it really is, it's not just about materials, although I will speak about the importance of local materials, but it's also about talent, it's about architects, engineers, manufacturers, all of these people that we'll be working on. I should obviously also mention Coastal, who's been our collaborator on this project. All of these consultants are based in South Wales, and I think that's really important. We have an enormous responsibility in the millions that we spend on constructing new homes to sort of invest that money locally. And I also want to reference when the homes are built, we'll need skilled tradespeople to be able to manage and maintain those homes. So there's an obligation on us to work with our local supply chain and local higher education facilities and local colleges as well, because they essentially are training the skilled local supply chain that we will need as we transform all of our new buildings to low carbon. So turning to the Gwynfaen project, it's located near to the Loch Estuary, within the Swansea, with an incredible setting. As you can see there, some images capturing the real essence of what it's like next to the Loch Estuary. It's a very special place. It's got incredible views, incredible atmosphere. And the site itself, it was allocated for housing, and it was already partly constructed to the north and the south. But essentially it is a green field. And with developing on a green field, I think it does come with an enormous privilege and an enormous sense of responsibility, and therefore from the very onset, we wanted to have a really strong vision for what we wanted to do on this site. And it started with this vision of a place, using the word place close to nature. So we imagined living in the new homes and the new place that we're going to create at Gwynfaen really needed to be about how houses coexist with a very green environment, a green landscape. So we really set on paper before any kind of design work was done the things that were going to drive our vision. You know, the idea of bringing people out of their homes into this incredible green landscape and making sure that you had the sort of walking and cycling connections that you needed to go enjoy the landscape and be able to walk into town and so on. So it's very important, a place close to nature. But also very much centred on communities as well. So at Gwynfaine, we wanted to really get this. There's 144 homes at Gwynfaine, and at the centre of it, there's a community hub. And that's a facility around about 150 square metres that we're working with the local community groups to sort of really inhabit that space. And it could be a place that you work from, it could be a place that you socialise in the evening, have clubs and so on. So we're really sort of exploring that. But the whole idea is that we want a mixed community, so that of the 144 homes, I think roughly a third are affordable homes, social rent, a third are shared ownership homes, and a third are homes for open market sale, and they're completely blended in together. So this is the site in a little bit more detail, and believe it or not, 6 months before even employing an architectural design team, we worked with a master planner who specialised in landscaping, because what we wanted to do was really drive home that first concept of a green environment, a place designed, a place close to nature. So we designed the landscape first, and the white areas are areas that we sort of would integrate our new homes. But the most important thing was to get the landscape right. So we're planting, I think, 200 new trees. We're creating several green spaces and obviously preserving the shelter belt of trees to the north and the west of the site. And then there are images here about the kind of landscape design inspired by the Welsh, the environment around the Gower Peninsula, around the Loch Restri, so that all of those ideas will sort of be manifest within the development. But also, I think we wanted, and I should say this from the onset, really, we wanted to develop Gwynfaine as a genuine low-carbon development. And we wanted to throw all of our thinking around what that should be, from the use of low-embodied carbon materials to really capturing the essence of that kind of local vernacular that exists in the Loch Restri area, and then transforming that into a modern idea around genuinely low and zero-carbon homes. So we have some images there of traditional buildings, and the important thing about traditional buildings, and these are on the Gower Peninsula, the important thing about traditional buildings is that they're usually built with materials that have been sourced no further than 5 or 10 miles away from where the buildings have been built. And that was obviously due to the fact that, up until the 20th century, the transportation of materials was quite a difficult thing. But there's a lot to be learned about building buildings from local materials and actually also designing them to meet the local environment. Because I think we've developed a culture of design which kind of divorces itself from the places that they're being built. So we gave our architect a remit of find out what the local materials are, find out what the local forms are, and can you translate that into an architectural language for this site? So here's some other studies. When we talk about the local supply chain, that is literally materials that are available in Wales. And these are some of the sort of the local forms. So we did quite a lot of studying around that piece, because we genuinely wanted the scheme to feel as if it belonged in that environment. And here are some images again of locally, I think they call it vernacular, the local vernacular. And we weren't really ever going to be around copying that local vernacular, but we certainly wanted to learn what the essence of that was so that it could inspire our building. And I guess I'll show you some images now that sort of explain to you what we're looking at. The development is still under construction, but the way we wanted to express that local vernacular, we're with simple pitched roof forms, and we're using palette materials such as Welsh timber for the external cladding, lime render, and locally sourced Pennant stone. And in fact, there is no concrete blocks or bricks above foundation level at all in this project, because we genuinely believe that we need to transform the way we build, and the local supply chain in Wales are materials that can be transported to the site very easily, materials that don't involve huge amounts of combustion, either in the transportation of those materials or in the creation of those materials. So Welsh sourced timber is essentially the main building material that we're using on site. And here's an image of the community hub, right at the heart of the scheme. Another idea was really, we've spoken about this earlier, really bringing green infrastructure, if you like, into the actual streets. So it is a challenging concept around what typical residential streets should feel and look like. But we like the idea that literally from your window or your front door, you are in an environment where there are trees and plants, locally indigenous plants, right in your street. Because we feel and are passionate about the idea that that can also add to sort of people's sense of well-being. And then on the western fringe of our site, we wanted to turn a challenge, which is sustainable urban drainage, into a virtue. So a real wild green area with ponds and so on, obviously in a safe environment, but essentially a sort of a feature which, instead of having back gardens sort of butting onto hedges, literally turn the houses looking onto that great view and use that sort of western fringe as this incredible nature area, if you like, that completely is accessible to people. And at the heart of the development, we want to create very much like a traditional village, a village green, a space for people to socialise in, a space for people to enjoy, a community hub building at the centre of it, where you can charge your electric vehicle, etc., and just meet and integrate with people. Because we believe that that's all about placemaking as well. In terms of materials and local supply chain, I'll just speak a little bit about what we mean by that. So I've already mentioned timber, which is one of the best building materials if you want to decarbonise, but it's got to be timber, I think, and that's the way forward. And timber from Wales, because the supply chain is there. We have an enormous timber industry in Wales, but not much of it is used for house building in the way that we really believe it should be. So we need to work on that. At Greenvine, we're really driving that forward, though. We're also using locally sourced stone, reconstituted Welsh slate, for example. The insulation, which was mentioned earlier, we're using wood fibre, so that's a recycled wood from the timber industry. We recycled to create insulation. And the thing about insulation is that most insulation that goes into homes these days have got volatile organic compounds. By that I mean it's a synthetic material. We genuinely believe that we need to move away from that. We can't move away from it just like overnight, but we need to move away from it because I think it contributes to air quality, and we really want to move towards things like sheet wool, wood fibre insulation, recycled paper, etc. And obviously the cladding on the buildings are Welsh sourced larch, and the buildings themselves are manufactured using an off-site manufacturing system. One of the things about the project as well, we really scoured Wales to find a partner to build a panelised system for our new homes at Greenvine. And we noted that there are 5 or 6 companies in South Wales who are capable of manufacturing the kind of home that we wanted, and we engaged with those. And in order to achieve the kind of very low carbon standard that we're going for, so I don't know if the audience are aware of the EPC standard, but EPCA, Environmental Performance Certificate, EPCA is the highest standard that we can go for, and beyond that we wanted to go beyond that standard. And essentially we came up with several ideas, but the one that we favoured was the twin stud timber frame. So essentially we've got wood fibre insulation and timber panels and enormous amounts of insulation, essentially the idea there is that we want to minimise the rate at which heat from the inside the house transmits to the outside. So by minimising heat losses, we're doing the single most important thing to lower the amount of heating that goes inside the homes, because at the end of the day, over the lifetime of the building, that is going to be the single largest user of energy. And so I guess this graphic here shows the composition of the home using locally sourced materials, timber from Wales, stone or lime render from Wales again. And this kind of gives you an idea of where that is all brought together. And then working with, and it's very important to note as well, that the factory that manufactures the panels that go towards building these homes is only located in Neath, Sevenoaks Modular. And Hale Construction are the partner that we're using to develop the homes as well. So using Sevenoaks Modular's system, we're able to manufacture the home using not full volumes, which have to be transported on the back of a lorry, but in this particular case, whole walls with windows installed in the factory, with the insulation installed in the factory, so that the job really is assembling the home on the site. And that can be done much more quickly. And the idea there is also that the performance gap between what's designed and what's actually built on site is much more narrow when you build it in a factory and then assemble it on site, because it really is challenging to build to the kind of tolerances we need in the Welsh environment. Therefore, we're moving more and more towards that sort of off-site manufacturing. And then the homes themselves, worth mentioning that the whole 144 homes are completely combustion-free, and by that I mean there's no gas boilers. We're not burning anything to heat and provide hot water for the homes. We're making use of solar panels, batteries, air source heat pumps, electric vehicle charging points for every single home, and essentially the heat losses are reduced. I've finished with a couple of slides that shows how this project has inspired what we're now going to be building, not as a special project, but for everything that we build from now on, because that's really important. Gwynfaine's a very special project, and this is the kind of targets that we've achieved there. But the last couple of slides are, I spent most of last year really taking the learning from Gwynfaine and a few other projects that we've been working on, and really distilling that into a standard that we will use from this point onwards for all of our new homes to achieve EPCA and a SAP score of 100, minimise the heat loss by going for a fabric-first approach. Air tightness is really important for that. Using natural materials for the insulation of our homes, using and really exploiting the opportunities of off-site manufacture, a timber-first preference, because we really do recognise that that is the building material for the decarbonised future, and then obviously integrating a whole bunch of technologies into those homes and managing them intelligently to reduce the amount of energy that our homes use. And two small graphs to finish. If we continue building for the next few years, waiting for the building regulations to be changed in Wales, then our homes would continue to emit about 780 kilograms of carbon a year. So we can't do that. The reason behind the standard, the slide that I just showed you, is we've got to make the change now and not wait for that change to come in as a regulation. So essentially, our plan is to try to, over the next 3 years, get to a point where the standard home we're building is emitting 37 or 45 kilograms of carbon a year. And that's both to do with the way the homes are built, because a lot of carbon goes into the way we build homes, but the amount of energy that you use in the home as well. And the final thing, and it's the most important thing of all, really, as a company, Pobl are passionate about addressing fuel poverty. It's on everyone's minds at the moment with the way that energy is becoming more expensive. So turning to the grey, light grey, orange and red bars, if we can develop our standard and really drive forward that standard over the next few years, we aim to address the average monthly energy bill of 130 down to around about £49 a month. Obviously, a few goalposts have been moved since I drew that graph, but nevertheless, I think by going for that fabric first and emphasising off-gas and renewables, and using the sort of intelligent energy management of homes, I do believe that we will do as much as we can to address fuel poverty moving forward. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you very much.